Welcome to Donzi Tech. In this tutorial, we'll talk about if statement, while loops, for loops, classes, object, and then inheritance in Python. Okay. So to get started, we will begin with the if statement. So I just created a Python file here with the extension .py. So you can create a different Python file with a different name, but I have to make sure the file extension is .py. So that's the .py is the file extension for Python files. Okay. So you can have a variable, let's say a is equal to 10. And then b is equal to, let's say, 20. So if you want to check if a is equal to b, you can use the if statement here by writing if and then write the name of the variable, and then use two equal to sign to make comparison. So you want to compare variable a to variable b. That's the syntax of Python. So after you bring your colon. So if a is equal to b, you want to print a message a is equal to b. Okay. Else you want to print a is not equal to b. Okay, let me run this here. So in the terminal, you can see we have a is not equal to b, and that's true because a is 10 and then b is 20. But if I should change a to also 20 and then rerun this, I'll get a is equal to b because a is 20 and then b is also 20. Now let me change this back to 10. And then we have the not. Okay, you can say if a is not equal to b, print a is not equal to b, else you print a is equal to b. Okay, so we have the not, which is the exclamation and equal to sign, which means not. A is not equal to b. Okay. So if you run it, you get the message a is not equal to b, and that's true because a is 10 and then b is 20, which means they are not equal. But if I change this to 20 back again and run it, you get a is equal to b. Okay, so you can use the not also to make comparisons, or you can use the two equal to signs. Okay. Now let's look at the next one. So you can say if a is greater than b, print, let me change the message, a is greater than b. Let me do same for the else statement too. A is not greater than b. Okay, so if anytime a is greater than b, it's going to print this message, else it will print not greater than. Okay, let me clear the screen and rerun this thing. So we have a is not greater than b, and that's true because they are all of the same values. But if I change a to, let's say, 25 and rerun this program, I'll get a is greater than b, and that's true. Okay, and then let me take this back to 20 and then show you another one. So we have greater than, which means that it will start from 21. But if you want you to compare from 20, this means a is greater than or equal to b. That's the meaning of the greater. A is greater than or equal to b. So let me rerun this thing, and then you get a is greater than b because we said if a is greater than or equal to b, it should print this message, a is greater than b. Okay, that's why I got this message. In the same way, we have less than and then less than or equal to. So you can try your hands on this as well. Right. So now this is the basics of the if statement. Now let's use this in a practical example. So I'm going to ask the user for two numbers. I'm going to store that in a variable, let's say num1 should be equal to, since I'm going to accept integers, I'll just convert it right here by using the int, and I'll say enter first number. Let me just duplicate this. Let me change the variable name and then this to enter second number. Okay. So I'm going to create a variable result here, and I'll be using the formatted strings. I'll say your result. Let me first do the sum. Okay, let's say num1 plus num2. Then when I print the message, I'll say, let me use the formatted strings. Let me store that in a variable, let's say message. Okay, this is a simple message here. I'll say your result is, then I'll pass in the result variable result. So here, let me just print the message so that the codes look cleaner. Alright, so you just got two numbers from the user, num1 and num2, and then use the addition here to sum the two numbers the user will enter. And then I straight away converted the input into an integer, because by default the value that will be gotten from the input field will be a string. So I just converted that to an integer, and then here I can do the addition operation on it because it's an integer. Okay, I just created this variable here message to store the addition of to print the addition of the two numbers num1 and num2. Okay, now let me just run this here. Let's say 20 and then 20. I'll get your result is 40 because that's the addition of the two numbers I just entered. Alright, so let's add the if statement to this. So just like we did earlier on, you just say if result is equal to, so you can say equal to or greater than or equal to or greater than or less than, or you can do less than or equal to or not equal to. Okay, so it depends on the condition and then the project you're working on. So here I'll just say if the result is greater than or equal to, let's say 50, I say print. Let me take this up here because I would like to print it. So I'll say message, I'll print the message first. And then let me add another print message. Your result is greater than 50. Right. Now let me do the else here. So else, let's say I'll just print the same message. That's why I took it up there. So I'll just print the message variable here, and I'll say print again. Your result is less than 50. Okay. So there's no need for this. I'll just take it off. So it will ask for the first number. Let me enter 60 and then 20, so I'll get 80. So your result is 80, and then your result is greater than 50. That's because the addition of the two numbers 60 and 20 is 80, which is greater than the condition we specified here, which is 50. Okay, so let's try the next one if the value is less than it. So here let me just enter 10 and then 20. Okay, so your result is 30 and then your result is less than 50. You got this message because of the else. Okay, but let's say in a program where you have a lot of conditions to specify. In Python, you can use the elif. Okay, but with other programming languages, you use the else if. Okay, it depends on the programming language. But in Python, we use elif. So you can add a different condition. So you can say elif result is greater than or equal to, let's say, 30. Now let me do equal to. Okay, if the result is greater than or equal to 30, and let me bring the end operator here. So you can say end result is less than or equal to 49. Okay, so I don't want it to exceed this. Okay, I'll just print. Let me first print the same message here. Now say print your result is greater than 30 but not 50. Okay, so the end here simply means that these conditions here and then the condition here has to be true before it will run this command. But then if this is false, it means the condition here will not run. To just skip to the else and then run. Okay, and then we also have the or. So the or simply means that either of them can be true. So I'm just using the end. So end means that both of them has to be true before this command will run. Alright, so let's try that out. So here let me just enter 20 and let's say 10. Okay. So you notice here, your result is greater than 30, but not 50. Okay? That's because it will check if the result is greater than 30, that's true, and then the result is also less than 49. Then it will print this message. Let me enter a value which is more than the 30. So here, let me just do 40 and then let's say 30. So it will move to this, your result is greater than 50, because here we said the result should be greater than or equal to 30, and then the result should be less than or equal to 50. Okay. But the result is greater than 30. So this command is false. So it will skip this, and then since there are no other if statements, the first one satisfies it, because we said if the result is greater than 50, this will run. Okay, but then if this was false, then to move on to check here. If this is also false, then the last command that runs is the else. Okay, so the else simply means that all the conditions you have here couldn't work or didn't meet the requirement or the condition is specified. Okay, so that's the purpose of the else here. So the else is the last statement that runs in an if statement. Okay, now let's look at the while loop. So let me just create a new Python file here. Let me save this to my desktop. And then it's if while loop dot py. That's the file extension for Python files. The next thing we are looking at is the while loop. Okay, so the while loop, I'm going to build a simple multiplication table generator using the while loop in Python. Okay, but to get started, I'll just teach you how the while loop works. Okay, let me just create a variable here. Let's say a is equal to 10, and then anytime you create a loop, you need to increase your counter, else the loop will run forever. Now let me just give you an example. So to create a while loop, use the while here. While a is less than or equal to 10, let's set a is equal to 1. So while a is less than or equal to 10, and just say print a. So a is equal to 1, and say while a is less than or equal to 10, print a. The loop is still running. Let me close the terminal. Right, let me run a new terminal. Yeah. Okay, so you can see we have 1 1 1 1 1 1. So it will keep running to infinity. Okay, it will never stop because it doesn't have a value to increase. Okay, so to do that, you have to always say a. So anytime a is less than 10, you should print a, and then you should ask it to add 1 to a so that a will be able to increase. Okay, so if you put 2, it's going to increase by 2. Okay, but since I increase it by 1, it's going to add 1 1 1 1 1 1 up to 10. Okay, then it ended at 10 because I said less than or equal to, just like we did with the if statement. So greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. It's the same logic here. So if I say less than, it is going to end the loop at 9. Okay, so it will end the loop at 9. But if you want it to end at 10, you have to say less than or equal to. So if you increase the value at which a should increase to 2, it's going to print the result in this order. It's going to add 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 to it. Okay. Okay. But since I'm going to generate a multiplication table, I'm going to increase the value of a by 1. So now we have 1 2 3 up to this. Okay. And then with the multiplication table, we want to allow the user to enter the ending number for the multiplication table. Okay, so here I'm going to ask the user for 2 numbers. Let's say num, but I can give it any other name. So since it's an integer, I'm just going to convert it to an integer here, and I'll say enter a number. Okay. And then down here, I will create a variable named ending. And then the same, I'm going to make that an integer. And I'll say input and then ask the user to enter ending number. So in here, you can see while let me first set A, let me change it to counter so that it becomes readable. Let me set the counter to 1, let me change this to counter, okay. So while the counter is less than the ending number the user will enter, so while counter is less than ending number, let me just print the counter so that we see how it's working. Okay. The same, we have to increase the counter by 1, so plus equal to 1. So this will keep adding 1 to the counter value anytime it prints this message here. Okay, let me clear the screen first. So here, enter a number, let's say 2. I want to enter, let's say 12. Okay, so it's going to list up to 12 because that's the ending number I entered. Let's try that again. I'll enter a different value. So 2, I want to enter, let's say 20. It will end at 20. Okay, so it's going to keep adding 1 to the counter until it gets to 20 because we said less than or equal to the ending number. Alright, so now since we have the values of the counter, let me quickly show you that here. We can multiply the number the user will enter by the values of the counter. So it will be 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 4, 2, 3, 6 in that order. So it will keep multiplying them automatically. Okay, now let's try that here. Let me create a simple variable here, so multiply. So multiply the counter by the ending number. Okay, now let me just print multiply. Okay, I should now the variables. Okay, that's it. So here, enter, let's say 2. I want to enter 12. So you notice, now let me quickly check this. So multiply the counter, sorry, by the number the user will enter. So multiply the counter by the number the user will enter instead of the counter. Okay, let me clear the screen and rerun it. So here, I'm generating for 2 and then I want to end at 12. So here you can see we have 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 4, 2, 3, 6, 2, 4, 8 in that order until it gets to the 12. Okay, but you can make this more user friendly. Okay, you can add a message here. Let me just use the formatted string, so message, and then I'll use the same formatted strings here. Then I will say a number the user entered. Let me just bring this multiplication sign here. Okay, and I can add the value of the counter here, then bring an equal to sign, and then add the multiply variable. Okay, so now instead of printing the multiply, just print the message. Okay, so now it will be 2, the number the user will enter times the value of the counter equal to the result here. Alright, so let's try that out. Let me clear the screen once more. So here I'll just enter, let's say 2. I want to enter 12. So here we are going to get 2 times 1, then to give you the result in that order. So in the same way, you can try for other values as well. Let's say 5, you want to enter 20. So any number at all you enter is going to generate that multiplication table for you, okay, automatically. But that's how you can use the while loop. So you can use the while loop to repeat some functions or tasks you have to do over and over and over again in your program. So from the while loop, you look at the for loop. Okay. The same way, I'm going to create a new Python file here. So I'm going to name this for underscore loop.py. Okay. So with the for loop, I'm going to create a list here. The for loop will be very short. So let me just create a list of countries. Okay. So Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, Benin, Kenya, Mali. Yeah, I think making this okay. All right. So for you to print all the countries in this list, let me first check the countries variable. Okay. Okay. So you can see we have the countries printed here. Okay. So if you want to print each country, you need to use their index to access them, since the list is going to start from 0. So the first index of any list or a tuple is 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and that order. Okay. So if you want to print the countries here, if you want the first country, you're going to write the index. In the same way, if you want Nigeria, you have to write the index of Nigeria. It's going to print that for you. But then doing this will be very tedious. So you can just use a loop to print out all these countries at once. Okay. So to do that, I'll just use the for keyword and just say for, and then the next one is a variable. So here, since we don't have any keyword for creating variables in Python, you can just write the name of the variable. Okay. So anytime you assign a value to a variable, you have created a variable because there's no keyword for creating a variable. Okay. For example, if you do a here, you get an error. But then if you assign a value to it, it means that you have created a variable called a, which is storing the value of 10. Okay. The same we can say for, let me just say country in countries. Okay. Countries. So here you can just print the country variable. So if you run this here, you should get all the countries printed out. So Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, Benin, Kenya, and then Mali. Okay, so this is just a variable, so it means that you can use any other name. Let me just use X to make it more clear. So you can see we still got the same output. But then I chose to use country so that the code will be more readable. Okay, so you understand the values you are getting from the countries list here. So for country in country, then you get the values here. Right. Okay, so you can also use the range inside the for loop. Okay, so now to do that, let me just use the for here and then create a variable in range. You can see range here. So we can use the length method to get the length of the countries variable. So countries. Okay. So here, since we have the length of the countries, why do I keep typing count? Okay. So I'm just print the country. Let me comment the first one out. Okay, so you can see we have 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 5 because the 0 up to 5 here represents the index in this list. So if you remember, initially I did print and then I write the name of the countries variable countries. Okay, and then to access Ghana, I need to write the index of Ghana, which is 0. So I'll just write 0 here, and then this will print the first country. Okay. So here you can see I have Ghana. In the same way, if I want to print Nigeria, I'll write 1. Okay, but now since we are using the range here, and then you are getting the values from 0 to 5, we can then replace the values we are writing here manually with a variable so that it will keep increasing and then it will print all the countries inside the list. Okay. Now let me show you how that works. Okay. So here, instead of printing a country, just say print and then you write the countries variable, countries, okay, which is the first one here, and then you bring a square bracket and then you write country because this was the value we were getting, 0 up to the ending number or the number of items in your list here. Okay. So this, in the same way, you are going to get the results of Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, Benin, Kenya, Mali. Okay, so it depends on you, the one you are more comfortable with. Okay, so you can just do for country in countries to print out all the countries, or you can use the length to find the length of your list here, and then using the range you can find the number of items in it and then just print it here. Okay, so you just use the values from the counter here to print out all the items you have in your list. Okay, so now the next one we look at is functions. Okay, so to create a function, let me quickly create a Python file here. So let me just say func Now name it .py. Alright. So .py is just a file extension for Python files. And then to create a function, we use a def keyword. Okay. So after the def keyword, you type the name of the function you want to create. Okay. So here, if you want to add two numbers, or let's say print message, we have a function called print message. Then here you can say return Kofi is a boy. Okay, this is a simple function. And then if I run this, I'm not going to get any output. Okay, because anytime you create a function, you need to call that function before it works. Okay, so here you can call that function. So since I didn't add a print message here, I have to do print, and then I'll call the print message function. Then since the function, you need to bring your square bracket here. So now if you run it, you are going to get the message Kofi is a boy. Alright, so now this is the simplest function you can create. Okay, so Kofi is a boy here. But if you don't add a print here, it's just going to run, but you are not going to see the output. Okay. So now this is the first or the simplest one you can do. So after this, we have functions with arguments or parameters. So to create a function with parameters, the first thing you do is use your def keyword. Let me take this one off. So use the def keyword again. I'll say add numbers. Okay. Let's say you want to add two numbers, so you have to pass A and then B. But then since they are variables, you can use any other name you want. Okay, but I choose to use A and then B. Okay. Now there's the syntax. So after the bracket here, you bring your colon. That's the syntax. And then you pass in the variables here. So here, let's say return A plus B. Okay, this is your function. Okay. So the next time you call the function here, let's say print, and then add numbers. Okay. So the moment you bring this bracket here, it's going to tell you the argument you passed in. So you passed A and then B. Okay. So you have to assign the values here. But if you assign only one and then you run this, you are going to get an error because one argument is missing, which is B. Okay. So if you pass two arguments, you have to use two. But if you pass one, you are going to get an error. So here, let me just do 10, 10, and then run it. So you can see I have the output here, 20. But then if I add more than the argument or parameters I specified, I'm going to get another error. It tells you that the function takes 2, but 3 were given. Okay. So you have to be mindful of the arguments you pass. So if you pass 2 arguments, means you can only write 2 here. If you write 3, get an error. If you write 2, then you pass 1 here, you get an error. In the same way, if you write 1 and then you pass 2 here, you're going to get an error. Okay. Now to solve this in a situation where you don't know the number of arguments you are going to pass to your functions, you can use what you call the arbitrary argument, which is the args. Okay. So here you can create a different function here. So with this function, I'm just going to name it let's say children. Okay, say children. And then since I don't know the number of arguments I'm going to pass to the function, I'm going to use the asterisk here. Okay, now say case. But this in programming we use args. Okay, but just for demonstration, let me use case here to tell you can use any other name here. But in programming, you have to use the args. Okay, and then the arbitrary function, the one with one asterisk here, returns a tuple. So you can access it just like you access a list. You can use a for loop to print all the items you have in it. Okay. So to show you that, let me create a for loop here. So let's say for child in kids. Okay, that's the argument you have here. So here you can see it's a tuple here. Okay. So this is just like the for loop I did here. So for country in countries, print country, in the same way, you have it inside the function here. Okay, so you are just building on top of what you have done so far. So you are just say print, say my children are, and then let me just add the child variable. Okay, so now if I call this function here, I can pass in a tuple. Okay, so let me just say children here. So I told you anytime you create a function, you need to call that function before it will work. Okay, so you can see here there's no, like, the arguments you are supposed to pass are not limited. Okay, so here I can say Kofi, Ama, King. You see, you can pass a lot of arguments, and then you see my children are Kofi, Ama. Since we use the for loop here, we're able to print all of them. But in a case where you don't want to print all of them at once, let me just take this out here. Okay, I told you the way we access a tuple is just like how I can access a list. So in the same we use the square brackets and then use the index. So the first item here starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, that one, just like you have for the list here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, that one. The index starts from 0. So here it's just going to print Kofi, the first child here. Let me just clear this here. Let me add a print message. Okay. So here I'm going to have my first children are Kofi, but that's wrong. So my third child is Kofi. So if you run this, my first child is Kofi. Okay. The same way, if you want to print your second child, you change the index to 1. So my child is Ama. Okay. But then I use the for loop in the situation where you want to print out all the items you have in that tuple. Alright. Okay, so with the functions, I'll not go deep into it. Okay. From here, let's look at the lambda before we move on to the classes. So the lambda, we use it for creating short and then small anonymous function in our program. Okay, so the lambda function can have one expression, but any number of parameters. Okay, so here you can see numbers should be equal to, then use the lambda keyword here, and then you specify the argument or the parameters. Let's say num1 and then num2. Okay, and then you bring your colon and then you specify the parameters. So let's say num1 plus num2. So you call this in the same way you call your normal functions here. Let me just do a print. So print numbers. This is taking time to load. Okay, it's supposed to show us the so here you can see the number of arguments you pass, so num1 and then num2. So if I pass 10 and then comma, let's say 20, if I run this, I'm going to get 30. So this is just like the normal function we did earlier on, where I said def add numbers, and I passed a comma b, and I said return a plus b. Okay, so add numbers, add number, and then 10, then 20. Okay, so this function here, this whole thing here is the same as this. So let me run this here. Once you have the same output, 30 and then 30. So we use the lambda for writing short anonymous functions in our program. Okay, so you can see it's very short here. It can only have one expression. You cannot have more than one. Okay. So the next thing we'll talk about is classes. Okay, so from the classes we talk about objects, inheritance, and then methods. Okay, that will be the last thing we'll talk about. So let me just create a new Python file here. So So oop.py. Okay. So to create a class in Python, use the class keyword here. Let's say you want to create a class called user. Okay. And then inside here, you need to define the init function. So init function runs anytime the class is being instantiated or a new object is being created from the class. Okay. So the first one is self. Then here you can add the parameters you want or the attributes or features you want your class to have. So I want the user to have a name, email, and then gender. Okay. So since the function this just like the normal functions we did here, the def keyword is the same thing here. Right. And then in here you need to write self dot, which is the current instance of the class, sorry, of the objects, dot email should be equal to email, and then same for the gender. So self dot gender should be equal to gender. Okay. So now we have created our class. So let me just create a new instance of it or a new object from the class. Okay. So you need to create a variable here. I just say p1, which is, let me use user1, should be equal to the class, and then here you can see the attribute we passed. So name, let's say John Doe, comma, and then to ask for the email address, let's say john@gmail.com. And then lastly, we have the gender, let's say male. Okay. So if I print user1 dot name, should print John Doe. All right, let's try that. So you have John Doe. But if you want to print the whole attribute of the object, you just use dot underscore underscore dict underscore underscore. All right. So this will return a dictionary. So you notice I was using the name here. So I did print user1.name. So name is a key and then John Doe is a value. So use the keys to access the values. That's how the dictionary works. Okay. So you have name. If you want to get the name of the object, you can say dot name here. Then you get the name. Since the dictionary can use the keys to access the values, unlike the list and tuples where you use their index to access them. So if you want to print the whole attribute of the object, you can use underscore underscore dict. Okay. So this will return the dictionary of all the attributes of the object. Okay. Now let's talk about methods. Okay. So a method is a function, but it's just that it's inside a class. Any function inside a class is called a method. Okay. Let me give you a quick example here. So let me just create a variable here. Let's say message should be equal to Kofi is a boy. Alright, let me just print the type of this message variable. Okay, so you can see it is a string. Okay, it is a class string, and then it has methods. So we have dot upper. Okay, dot upper. So if I run this, let me just take the type of, I want to convert the message to uppercase. Okay, so here you get Kofi is a boy. Okay, so the dot upper is a method written in the string class. Okay, so in the same way, yeah, you can have your own functions, but anytime you write the function inside the class, it is called a method. So here you can see def, let's say registered. Let me pass in self here. So let me just say return. Let me use the formatted strings. So self dot name is registered successfully. All right. So here I can call that method. So I can say dot registered. Since the method, you need to bring your bracket here. Okay. So you get John Doe is registered successfully. Okay. So it's just like the class, sorry, the string class I showed you here. So they have a class called string and they have all the methods to it. So in the same way, you can create your own class and then you define your methods. So the methods are just the functions inside the class. Now let's talk about inheritance. So let's say you want to create a class here, let's say user, and then you want to create another class called, let's say, employee. Okay. So you want your employees should have the features of a user. You don't want to ask for, let's say, name, email, and then gender again. So you can just inherit from the user class here. You just write the name of the user or the class you want to inherit from. Okay, so here you just say def init underscore init. Okay, so def underscore init and then self, and then you pass in the attributes you are inheriting from the parent, which is the name, email, and then the gender. You have the name, email, and the gender. And then since you are inheriting, you need to use the super keyword here and then dot init again, and then you pass the attribute you got from the parent. You got the name, email, and then the gender from the parent. So we just do init name, email, and then the gender. But I want to add additional features to the employee. The employee should have an ID. So let's say emp underscore ID. Employee should have a role. Let's say role, and then let's say experience. The employee will have an experience. Okay. Then since these are new attributes, you need to instantiate it just like we did with the first one here. So self.name. In the same way, you can say self.emp underscore ID should be equal to emp ID. Okay, so we notice that we didn't do self.name and then self.email again because we have done that in the parent and then we are just inheriting from the parent, so there's no need to do that here. So if you do that here again, it means that you are creating your own new class here. You are not inheriting anything from the parent, right? So here you can say self.row should be equal to row, and then lastly the experience. So self.experience should be equal to experience. Right. So let me create a new instance of the employee class. Let's say emp1 should be equal to the employee. Okay. You'll notice that we've got all the attributes we have in the parent. So name, email, and then the gender. Let's try it out here. So let's say John Smith. Let me do John Smith this time, and then email. Let's say john@gmail.com, and then gender. So John is a male. Employee ID. Let's say 2456. Okay, that's the employee ID, and then the role. Let's say general manager, and then the experience. Let me use a string here. Let's say 5 years. Right. Okay, now let me say emp. Let me print it first. Let's say print emp. And then I said use the underscore dict if you want to print all the attributes of the class. So let me just comment this out so that I don't get the message again. So if I run this program here, let me first clear the screen. So you can see we have the name which we got from the parent, the email from the parent, the gender from the parent, and then these are the new attributes we added, which is the employee ID, role, experience here. Right. So now you can add a method here. You can create a method. But let me just access the parent method here, which is the register. Anytime you inherit from the parent, you get everything. Inherit everything from the parent. Let me run the method here. So you can see John Smith is registered successfully. Even though we don't have that method inside the employee class here. But because we inherited from the parent, we get access to all of its methods and then attributes. Okay? So if you add a different method here, you can access it in the child here. There's no need to recreate the same method here. All right. So now that's all about the classes and then inheritance.